Have you ever noticed that the more available you are, the less people seem to value you? It sounds backward, but it's not. What if I told you that your constant goodwill, your habit of always being there, might be the very thing blocking your personal transformation? Carl Jung understood this better than most, and soon you will too. Some people think being endlessly accessible is a sign of love, empathy, or inner light. But in practice, you end up drained, resentful, and invisible. Because when you're always saying yes, you eventually stop existing. For yourself. That's a hard truth, but one you need to hear. You weren't born to be everyone's emotional doormat. You were born to discover yourself. In this video, we're diving into a path few dare to take. We'll explore the inner workings of the psyche, why your energy is being drained, how persona and shadow shape your relationships, and how conscious withdrawal can become your greatest tool. But be warned, what you learn here might flip your world upside down, in the best possible way. So if you're tired of feeling used, lost, or disconnected from yourself, stay with me until the end. Because when you stop being available to everyone else, you finally become available to someone you've ignored for far too long. Yourself. That feeling of exhaustion at the end of the day, even when you didn't do anything big? Yeah. Carl Jung would call that a misuse of psychic energy. Every time you respond to a message out of obligation, say yes when you mean no, or try to please everyone, you're leaking energy in unproductive ways. This constant dispersion wears you out and leaves you wide open to manipulation and personal stagnation. The psyche, as Jung explained, is a system with limited resources. It's not an infinite power source. And the more you scatter your energy trying to meet external demands, the less of you is left for you. Think of it like a phone with too many apps running. It dies before noon. Emotional overavailability quietly robs you of your vitality, making individuation nearly impossible. Being constantly accessible feels noble, doesn't it? But in excess, it becomes a trap. There's a big difference between being available and being emotionally exposed. When you don't set boundaries, you allow others to use your psychic energy however they like. And not everyone uses it wisely. Ever noticed how the people who demand the most from you often give the least back? Many people feel guilty for saying no, as if they're failing at being kind. But real growth requires prioritization. Emotional availability without discernment becomes emotional drainage. For example, think about someone who's always solving everyone else's problems but never has time to face their own. The result? Chronic fatigue, frustration, and a deep sense of personal disconnection. Here's a simple way to start reclaiming your energy. Pick one day a week where you don't respond to non-urgent messages. Use that time to observe your own thoughts, do something that nourishes you, or simply rest. It may seem small, but that space is where the psyche begins to reorganize itself. And that's the first step to regaining your center, essential for individuation. Jung said the unconscious speaks to us through symptoms, dreams, and sometimes through sheer exhaustion. That tiredness isn't just physical. It's your soul shouting, "Stop giving yourself away where you're not being received." Ignore that cry, and your body will step in through anxiety, irritability, or burnout. These are all red flags your psyche is waving. This is where discernment kicks in. Knowing who and what you want to be available for is a mark of maturity. Not everyone deserves your time, and that's okay. Saying no isn't being harsh. It's an act of self-respect. Think about it. Ever noticed how some people only show up when they need something, and then vanish the moment you withdraw? That tells you everything. Some believe that always being helpful is a sign of inner light, but even the sun sets. All energy has cycles, including psychic energy. Respecting that cycle is one of the greatest acts of self-love, because if you keep pouring yourself into things that don't nourish you, you're blocking your own personal transformation, and individuation can't happen in self-neglect. When you start protecting your emotional availability, your clarity sharpens. You begin to notice subtle manipulations in others, emotional demands masked as love or concern. That clarity is fierce, in the best way, because once you see clearly, there's no unseeing it. And at that point, when you begin consciously stepping back, something else starts to surface. The masks fall off, and the shadows, yours and theirs, start to speak. Most people don't realize they're wearing a mask all day long. They wake up, put on the costume of expectations, and play the role they believe the world wants. Jung called this the persona, the social mask we wear to adapt. And to a degree, that's necessary. The problem is when you start forgetting who you are behind that mask, when the persona becomes a prison instead of a bridge. Here's the paradox. The more someone seeks external approval, the further they drift from their true self. Psychic energy gets funneled into maintaining the act instead of building authenticity. And what's left? Emptiness. It's the kind of person who's always pleasing others but feels invisible inside, because no one really sees them, because they don't really see themselves. And when the persona collapses, the shadow rises. The shadow is everything you've repressed or denied. Your fears, your anger, jealousy, desires you were taught to suppress. When you pull away from emotionally draining dynamics, the shadow begins to surface. Not because you're worse, but because you stopped numbing yourself. And facing yourself without filters is tough, but liberating. Ever had someone react badly when you started saying no? Called you selfish when you began setting boundaries? Often, that's not about you. It's their shadow projecting onto you. As Jung said, we project what we refuse to accept within ourselves. And your emotional withdrawal? It's forcing others to confront parts of them they'd rather keep buried. That's why relationships often shift when you start reclaiming your energy. Your mask served their illusion, and without it, they feel like they're losing control, not connection. Emotional manipulation thrives when you're over-identified with your persona. But once you step out of the role, you disrupt the script, and it makes people uncomfortable. The goal isn't to destroy the persona or demonize the shadow, it's to integrate. The persona has a purpose, but it can't replace your identity. And the shadow? It's not the enemy. It's a map. It holds uncomfortable truths that, when acknowledged, unlock your personal power. So when it appears, don't run. Sit with it. Write. Reflect. This is where real self-awareness begins. Integration requires energy used wisely. The world will constantly try to pull you back into old roles, through guilt, silence, even flattery. That's when you need to stand firm. A simple exercise? At the end of each day, jot down any role you played that didn't feel authentic. That awareness alone can change everything. The more you drop the masks, the more yourself begins to emerge. And yes, that might cost you some relationships that relied on your performance. But in return, you'll attract connections that resonate with who you really are, not who you were pretending to be. That kind of authenticity is rare and powerful. This integration journey isn't a one-time event. It's a rhythm, a cycle. And like all deep cycles of healing, it needs space. Internal space. External space. That's where silence comes in. Not as absence, but as a deep, deliberate presence. For Carl Jung, individuation wasn't a theory. It was a spiritual necessity. It's the process of becoming who you truly are, not who you were conditioned to be, and it doesn't happen overnight. It's a long, deep journey of self-awareness, shadow work, and conscious withdrawal. Because only in silence does the psyche find room to speak. Withdrawing emotionally isn't abandonment, it's reconnection. It's the moment you stop searching for validation outside and begin listening to the self inside. Many people confuse emotional detachment with coldness or ego, but it's actually a sign of emotional maturity. For example, when you stop replying immediately to people who constantly demand your attention and realize the world didn't fall apart. On the road to individuation, you'll start to feel the weight of things that were never really yours. Family roles, social labels, emotional identities. It's heavy. And as you lighten your load, you'll have to let go of what no longer fits. Think of it like packing for a long journey. You can't take everything. And much of what we carry is habit, not necessity. Setting personal boundaries is like redrawing your energy map. It's not about building walls, it's about building gates. You decide who enters, who stays, and who no longer belongs in your emotional space. This isn't aggressive. It's quiet, respectful, but firm. A helpful practice? At the end of each week, reflect on 3 situations where your energy felt drained. What could you have done differently? Focus is the psyche's main currency. Jung said, "What you focus on grows." If you invest your psychic energy in people and spaces that validate yourself, you flourish. But if you pour it into places that demand masks and over-availability, you wilt. Not because you lack strength, but because you lack alignment. Individuation is about that alignment, from the inside out. This process also reveals who you are when no one's watching, and that can be scary, because what you find might not be pretty, but it's real. And only the real can create authenticity. Transformation isn't always glamorous. Sometimes it's just you, alone, crying at 3 p.m. because something finally clicked. That moment? That's gold. That's growth. As you move through individuation, you start to feel a silent freedom. The freedom to say no without guilt, to be absent without explanation, to stop carrying inherited emotional burdens. That freedom is the reward for psychic redirection. And strangely enough, it's in withdrawal that your strength grows. Most people expect individuation to be transcendental, but often it's lonely, messy, and raw. No fireworks, just silence, confrontation, and clarity. But the clarity is worth it. Because from that place, you stop chasing yourself and start embodying yourself. So if you feel yourself pulling away from people, habits, or spaces that once defined you, you might just be heading in the right direction. Individuation hurts, but it frees you. And once you're on this path, you can't go back. But to keep moving forward, you'll need to embrace silence as your ally. Silence isn't the absence of noise. It's the presence of self. Carl Jung saw silence as sacred space, where the psyche can breathe, reorganize, and truly listen. In a world where everything is loud, those who master silence access a deeper level of self-awareness. Conscious withdrawal is not escape. It's strategy. And often, it's in the quiet that we begin to understand what life's noise was hiding all along. That discomfort you feel when you begin pulling back, the sense that you're disappearing or being forgotten, that's emotional withdrawal syndrome. It's your psychic system detoxing from overstimulation, shallow connections, and performative presence. And it's through this detox that you begin to notice how much psychic energy was wasted on meaningless conversations, forced obligations, and habitual reactions. Sometimes Not responding is louder than any reply. And it's not about being cold. It's about refusing to be an emotional regulator for everyone else. Walking away from an argument, for instance, can be wiser than winning it. Those who've mastered their psychic energy know not everything deserves a response. And that, in itself, neutralizes emotional manipulation. If you've never tried a self-retreat, here's a challenge. Choose one weekend, go offline, avoid social media, and focus solely on yourself. Read, write, reflect. You'll start to hear thoughts that were buried beneath your daily distractions, thoughts that may reveal wounds, desires, or insights long ignored. That's not loneliness. It's reconnection. The psyche needs space to process. Without silence, it only accumulates, and buildup turns into mental noise, anxiety, burnout. Silence is the reset button. Jung understood this. That's why silence is part of individuation. It's in quietude that the self speaks most clearly, unfiltered, unmasked, and fully present. Have you noticed how some people get uncomfortable when you don't reply right away? That discomfort says a lot. Some people don't want your presence. They want your reaction. And when you stop reacting, they feel lost. Why? Because they were using your psychic energy as emotional crutches. Silence removes that crutch and liberates you. Silence also reveals emotional games. The passive-aggressive, "you disappeared" message. The "everything's fine" laced with guilt. In stillness, these games become obvious, and you stop playing them. Because once your mind is clear, discernment sharpens. And that's what turns reactivity into choice. Choosing to be quiet? That's emotional mastery. Of course, silence doesn't replace communication. It refines it. Those who learn to pause speak with greater clarity. They speak from self, not from script. And that kind of speech lands differently. It's not about maintaining an image. It's about expressing truth. A truth that only silence can prepare. Silence teaches boundaries. You learn where others end and where you begin. That changes everything. The way you love, the way you argue, the way you protect your peace. Conscious withdrawal gives you back the emotional autonomy you unknowingly gave away. And that autonomy? That's where real personal transformation begins. Because when you finally stop being emotionally available to the world, you start being fully available to yourself. But now, with all this clarity, what are you going to do with it? There's a big difference between disappearing and preserving yourself, between hiding and recalibrating. Jung never suggested we abandon the world, but that we face it with an integrated psyche. And that takes strategy. Once you understand how your psychic energy works, you realize that occasional detachment isn't enough. You need a recurring conscious cycle of withdrawal, reflection, and reintegration. Like a warrior who steps back, not out of fear, but to see the battlefield clearly. This strategic retreat acts like emotional hygiene. Just like the body needs rest, the psyche needs pause to heal and realign. And that doesn't happen in chaos. You need rituals, scheduled moments of silence, where you reduce stimulation and tune inward. Example: pick one weekend per month to disconnect, reflect, and reset. It's like opening your inner windows and letting fresh air in. During this cycle, explore practices like journaling, active meditation, dream reflection, or pattern tracking. These help rechannel your psychic energy in alignment with your individuation. They also show whether you're slipping back into roles that no longer reflect your evolving self. This isn't just me time, it's psychic recalibration. The process also exposes where your energy is leaking. Maybe it's a draining relationship or a compulsive habit, like scrolling endlessly through social media. When you create this space, You start spotting the invisible energy thieves. And with awareness comes choice. You become the gatekeeper of your emotional availability, saying clearly, "This stays. That goes." This transforms how you move through the world. No more reacting to everything. You begin responding intentionally. People might find you more quiet, more selective, and that's okay. Strategic withdrawal filters your relationships. You see who's really aligned with yourself and who was just addicted to your mask. But the goal isn't to withdraw forever. Reintegration matters. You return, but not the same. You come back clearer, calmer, more coherent. Your words carry weight. Your boundaries are clean. And your presence? It's no longer scattered. It's directed. That's the power of psychic self-regulation. Suddenly, the changes inside start shifting your external reality. New relationships, healthier priorities. Your habits evolve. And most importantly, you start living with emotional sovereignty. You're no longer trapped in roles, projections, or past patterns. You've reclaimed yourself. But don't be fooled. This isn't magic. It's commitment. It requires emotional discipline, curiosity, and the courage to break your own cycles. But once you taste that balance between presence and withdrawal, between action and stillness, it's hard to accept anything less. You become someone who not only knows what needs to be done, but who lives it. And in today's reactive world, that's rare, that's powerful, and maybe that's exactly what you're becoming. Now tell me, after everything we explored, are you still going to keep giving yourself away to people who don't respect your energy? Will you keep ignoring the signals, your body, your psyche, your soul, just to keep up appearances? The truth is simple, but it takes courage. No one's coming to save you from burnout if you're the one lighting the fire. How many times have you silenced yourself just to keep the peace? How often have you been emotionally available to people who were never emotionally available for you? It ends here. The cycle changes when you change. And now that you've seen the truth about psychic energy, shadow work, individuation, silence, the real question is, what will you do with it? Will you pretend you don't know what you know? Or will you start applying it today? What if you created your own ritual of withdrawal? What if you began tracking the moments that leave you drained? What if you finally chose yourself? Again and again. If something in this resonated with you, drop a comment below. Share your moment. Share your pain. Or that insight that hit you while watching. And of course, subscribe to the channel and hit the bell. Because we don't just talk psychology here. We live transformation. And this journey, it's only getting started.